So that was absolutely my favourite episode yet of Superman and Lois. Episode 11, which was called A Brief Reminiscence in Between Cataclysmic Event, was absolutely phenomenal. We got to see so much stuff. There were so many little Easter eggs and hints from other things that relate to Superman from over the years. The first half of the episode was essentially just completely flashbacks. I kind of expected this episode to be flashback centric. I was kind of, when thinking about it, kind of in my head saying it would be similar to the Arrow episodes where they would have 90% of the episode be a bit of flashbacks, or I guess maybe closer to 75% be the flashbacks, whereas the rest of the episode would be during the present day. And normally this would happen at the point where something big happens in the plot, and because usually in Arrow, we were always excited to see the flashbacks again, at least in the early seasons. Like, the flashbacks were always the stuff that we were really looking forward to. Then something huge in the main plot would happen to the point where we could not wait to see the main plot again, and then they would use that to kind of switch it and make the flashback be centric, kind of to play with us. That's kind of what happened here. Whereas last week something huge happened that we really wanted to see, so they made this episode very flashback centric, which I'm honestly fine with because, like I said, this is the best episode of the show yet. Everything was just clicking so well in it. But the thing is that it wasn't kind of flashbacks and then switching to present day stuff. It was actually just the first 20 minutes were all flashbacks, and then the last, I'd say it's close to the first 25 minutes was all flashbacks, and then the last 15 minutes was all in the present day, which was very, 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 how they did that was very surprising to me. Very similar to the Black Mercy, honestly, which we saw in Supergirl in season 1, but the Black Mercy is a pretty big Superman plotline where about the for the man who is everything sort of situation, where like the Black Mercy is kind of this alien flowery insect thing latches onto the chest of its victim, and then it essentially gives them a fake life that they want to live, and during that they're kind of presented with the situation. Do they want to stay in this fake life that they love, or do they want to come out of it and kind of go back to reality? And that's a lot of what I was getting from this, was very similar to Black Mercy. Obviously though, however, since it was memories and it wasn't like a fake life, Clark's not living a terrible life, so it didn't really make sense to be presented with a conundrum if you wanted to stay in it or not. Whereas with Supergirl, she was presented with the fact that she was back on Krypton, whereas her family was still alive. We actually saw a young Kal in that episode. So obviously it made more sense there. But yeah, it was really interesting episode how they presented it. I really was not expecting this switch in tone. I was expecting this to be more or less a wholesome or fun episode the whole way through, and then at the end cut to maybe what's happening in present day. But as a whole, I wasn't expecting it to get as dark and serious as it did, which I really appreciated. Switching between tone like that is something that not a lot of shows can master very well. They definitely showed that they could do it here. But Morgan Edge, he or Talrow, or whatever we want to call him, Adam Rayner, who plays him, this was his best episode yet. He was absolutely fantastic in his scenes this episode. He was threatening, he was serious, and he did something that I'm going to say Tom Cavanagh also does very well, which is make a new character that he's still playing feel very different or feel very unique. Like, it didn't hit me until halfway through his dialogue this episode when I was going, this was Morgan Edge a couple episodes ago. This felt like a completely different character a few episodes ago, and that's an testament to the writing and to the acting that they were able to make him feel like a completely different character now, rather than just feel like Morgan Edge who's doing a deeper voice or something stupid like that. So huge props from there. But I want to talk about the flashbacks for a little bit real quick. So essentially they went through all of the stuff that we saw at the beginning of the pilot, like that whole 5-minute flashback segment at the beginning of the pilot, besides the very early stuff like Clark landing, like Jonathan Kent having the heart attack. Most of that stuff was reused here, but just those scenes expanded on, and I absolutely love that. It essentially made this feel like a second pilot, or feel like they deliberately filmed. I honestly don't know how they did this. Like, did they film those scenes for the pilot, but then went back and just redressed the sets and refilmed everything for this episode? Or was all the flashback stuff in this episode filmed for the pilot, and then they went back and, actually that does not make sense, because the Atom Man versus Superman fight was the people filmed that pretty recently. Like, they got that on set. They got pictures on set of them filming that scene. So obviously that was filmed. But I mean the scenes that were in the flashbacks of episode 1. So like, for example, I don't know, Clark and Lois and Perry White in the Daily Planet. We got an extra Perry White scene and we got an extra Clark and Lois scene in this episode that wasn't in the pilot. So were those 3 scenes filmed together when they were filming the pilot? Or, I don't know, did they just go back and film them when they were filming this episode? And honestly, going back and filming them when they were filming the pilot makes a lot of sense, because the pilot took a long time to film. It took like 4 months or something ridiculous, because I know that as far as, I think it was, they started filming the pilot in either late August or early September, and then they were still filming some pilot scenes in like January or February, even though like they were filming other episodes as well. They had went back and filmed extra scenes for the pilot. So I feel like they may have actually filmed a lot of this stuff along with the pilot, which is why it took so long to film the pilot. But it was really great to see all that. It was a very unique way to bring those scenes back, and I really did appreciate getting a lot of those scenes expanded on. The Fortress Soldier stuff at the very beginning was very cool. We've seen this stuff with Clark discovering the Fortress of Solitude 101 times at this point, but it was very similar to Superman the movie for me, where Clark arrives, he talks with Jor-El for a little bit, he learns a little bit about Krypton, and then we cut to him becoming Superman, or becoming the present day version that we know. Like, for example, in this he had a transition to Tyler Hoechlin, whereas in Superman the movie, the younger actor, who I don't know the name of, had a transition to Christopher Reeve, and then he left the Fortress then. It felt like a lot like that, where we didn't see the 10 years between him training and becoming the man we know. It was instead kind of just, they glossed over it, which I appreciate. You know, we didn't need to see a bunch of scenes of Clark training or whatever. I feel like seeing him fly for the first time, seeing him super speed, a lot of that stuff, it was just worth it to see that. That was enough that we need to see. And of course, the transition to Tyler Hoechlin was amazing. I loved that. The Jor-El in this episode was very interesting, because I'm really used to the cold Jor-El from Smallville, who's constantly like, Clark, you know, stop caring about humans, you need to come train, sort of thing. And I know that obviously ended up being like fake in the end of Smallville, where it was just Jor-El trying to push Clark to be the best he was. But in this, Jor-El felt far more like a loving father, and like somebody who genuinely cares for Earth, who genuinely cares for Cal, than anything I can really think of. So that was really interesting as well. There was a lot of just great scenes with Jor-El in this episode. Like, for example, when we got Clark talking to him in the flashbacks a bunch of times, like when he was telling him about the wedding with Lois, and then we just cut to like this weird, creepy, almost horror film-esque thing of Jor-El shouting, "You need to get out of here now," or something similar to that. Which did feel like a horror film, which was again another example of how excellent they are balancing the tone in this. That was a really great scene. It came out of nowhere, and that's a scene honestly that's probably going to stick out for me in terms of this whole season, where I'm gonna like think that was a really cool scene, that was really interesting how they switched to that immediately. So it was great to see that. Then obviously Clark goes back to Smallville, he sees Martha again, he's gone for 10 years, which is insane. I feel like I know Jor-El probably didn't want Clark leaving for training, which essentially the Clark in Superman and Lois did what Smallville Clark didn't, because Smallville Clark just said, "Nah, I'm not training yet," and he went back to Smallville, whereas in this, he's like, "Yes, I'm ready to train," and then he trained for 10 years without leaving. But I feel like he could have popped in on Martha at least a little bit. But Clark went back, he saw Lana, he saw Kyle. In the yearbook of the high school yearbook, I actually paused it because I was like, okay, so of course there's going to be some Easter eggs in here. I didn't actually notice any, except for the fact that there seems to be a relation to Lana Lang in school. Like, did she have a brother or something in school? Which is something that they're possibly setting up for a later plotline, like for in a season or two he'll show up or something. I don't know, but that was interesting to me that they went to the effort of putting that in there. But then Clark gets the costume from his mother, which looks amazing. That was a great scene. He goes to Metropolis. We see the car scene from the pilot. We see the iconic ripping his shirt open. We see him jumping in a phone booth with the music. And the music this episode, it was absolutely phenomenal. I could not get enough of it. So many times I had to actually turn down the volume on my laptop because I was thinking I was going to hurt my ears, because I just could not get enough of how loud it was being, of how great it was. I just can't wait for the soundtrack for this show to come out. Dan Romer has done an amazing job with this. I did really like Blake Neely's Superman theme, but now after hearing this theme so much, I genuinely don't know if I could go back to hearing the Blake Neely theme in the crossovers for him. Although, to be honest, the Dan Romer theme, I don't know how that would work with the other shows, whereas Blake Neely's Superman theme is one that does very well mesh with how Supergirl's theme sounds, how Flash's theme sounds. I don't know how well they could make Dan Romer's theme mesh with the others, because it just feels so different, but it's amazing. Sorry, I went off on a little bit of a tangent there. But then Clark obviously joins the Daily Planet, Perry White, Lois Lane, and the Clark and Lois scenes were probably the best of the episode for me. I mean, the scenes in the Daily Planet with them, where they were falling in love with each other. And those scenes were so great, where Clark kind of realizes that him being Superman isn't all great, because now it's affecting how other lesser known villains are not getting the, I guess, they're not getting the limelight that would make them get caught. They're instead able to kind of fly a little under the radar, and that one of those was Atom Man from Superman Smashes the Klan. And so Clark and Lois investigate him. They investigate his whole situation, all the people he's kind of tied to, a lot of that stuff, and it was really, really, really good. It was really, really, really interesting. All those scenes were great. The music, the way that they kind of montage through their whole falling in love situation was great. The scene on the TV where Lois is interviewing Superman was fantastic. I genuinely can't think of a situation where we've seen that before, where Lois interviews Superman on TV. We've seen that so many times in comics, but I just can't think of it on TV. So, and that's honestly something that this show is doing a lot. It's doing a lot of things that are very iconic from the comics, but have never actually made their way to live action yet. So I really appreciate that. One thing I want to shout out real quick is that we got actually a Jimmy reference in one of the early Daily Planet scenes, where they're showing like Superman lifting the boat over one of the rivers, and they're like, Jimmy got a shot of it. Now this is interesting, because in Supergirl, I believe it was episode 1, when we first were introduced to Jimmy, or James as he goes as in a lot of that episode, or in a lot of that show, he shows a picture of Superman flying over Metropolis, and I believe, now it's been a while since I've seen that episode, but I need to rewatch it, but I believe he says in that this was the first picture he ever got of him, of Superman, and that Clark basically posed for it. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that this ship picture has to be the first picture Jimmy took in universe, but for me personally, and I'm sure for a lot of Supergirl fans out there, it would have been really, really nice if that picture he held up was the same one from Supergirl, because while for a lot of people who haven't seen Supergirl, it's not going to mean anything. It's going to just be a kind of a random, just another picture. Hey, look, I get Jimmy Olsen. That's a reference to Jimmy Olsen. That's great. But for us Supergirl fans, that would be so much deeper. It would mean that you went the effort of staying a little bit connected with Supergirl. Obviously, Crisis and stuff means that you don't have to pay attention to that stuff, but I just feel like that would have been a nice little extra step to go for people who are fans of both shows rather than just one. But honestly, the Supergirl stuff being omitted from this episode is far more noticeable than the other episodes. I'm actually going to do a video on this, because I do feel like it's gotten to the point where this is something we're talking about. I know that there's kind of a lot of animosity between Superman and Lois fans, certain areas of Superman and Lois fans, and certain areas of Supergirl fans. A lot of Supergirl fans kind of blame Superman and Lois for being the reason Supergirl is ending, and Superman and Lois fans feel like they're being attacked about the whole situation. I'm a fan of both shows, and I do personally feel like Superman and Lois not addressing Supergirl, especially in this episode, is getting to the point where it's a little bit hard to ignore. So I'm gonna do something about that. But yeah, so I don't really know what else to talk about. I guess Jordan and Sarah towards the end of the episode was very interesting. That is the one iffy part of the episode for me, is the fact that does feel like it came kind of out of nowhere. I feel like I probably would have preferred a little bit more setup on that front, rather than her just kissing him out of nowhere. I mean, I don't want to be friends anymore. See, the thing is, well, I'm not expecting them to stay boyfriend and girlfriend, maybe for like early season 2, but I'm expecting something to happen at some point that breaks them up, and I'm a little bit nervous about the CW-esque drama that may be sparked from that. So yeah, Lois and Kyle got a much needed bit of time to talk, especially after last episode, and Kyle kind of apologized to her, and Kyle kind of just reaffirmed what I've thought for a while, is that he's not a bad guy at all. He just kind of wanted the best for Smallville, and he thought Morgan Edge was the best thing for Smallville. And now that he knows Morgan Edge is not the best thing for Smallville, he's kind of dialing it all back. He's kind of apologizing to the people who he's been a bit crazy to, and I really do appreciate that. I think that Kyle genuinely is a good person. I think he's a good addition to the show, and I like his character a lot. I know a lot of people were probably upset when Clark saw Kyle run up to Lana in the flashbacks, but honestly, I was like, no, Kyle's a good guy. I'm happy that he's happy, kind of thing. Now, obviously that can change. Maybe something will happen that'll make us go, oh shit, so he's actually kind of racist or something like that, which, if that happens, I'm going to be annoyed. But at the moment, we haven't seen anything to that. He's a little bit of... He's stubborn, he's hard-headed, but as a whole, he's got the right idea in mind. And at the end of the episode, Clark is now with Morgan Edge. We saw Morgan Edge's flashbacks to his backstory a little bit, which is just basically a dark parallel of Clark's. Like, it feels like that is from another Earth sort of thing, which is crazy. Morgan Edge, or Tal-Rho, I need to keep calling him Tal-Rho, I keep calling him Morgan, but Tal-Rho's backstory is very much like a bizarro version of Superman, in that it is a true flipped version. It's a true evil version of the character. Zeta-Rho looks like your genuine typical 80s villain, which I really dig. I think that's a really cool aesthetic and look to go for. And Clark was being tortured. They're trying to turn Clark. Now, there's a couple ways this could go. They could go like the Oliver Queen route, where he pretends to be with the villains and then switches, like Oliver did in our season 3 episode 23, or late season 6 with Richard Dragon. But I honestly think that they might not go that route. I'm thinking maybe they put Zeta-Rho's consciousness into Clark's head, so Clark is essentially gonna have Morgan Edge, or sorry, Tal-Rho's father's consciousness. Now, it's also possible they put Tal-Rho's consciousness in there, and Zeta is in Tal's old body, which would have been Morgan Edge. But I personally think something weird's going to happen like that, where Clark isn't Clark anymore. I don't think he's just been kind of tortured enough now where he's evil. That would be kind of stupid. I think that either he is playing them, or he has completely been body snatched and there's somebody else in his head. So Lois obviously called John Henry Irons, and I'm guessing John Henry Irons as Steel is going to be showing him very, very soon, and he's going to be one of the guys to really be one of the heroes of the season. I'm feeling it. I think that John Henry Irons is going to show back up. We're all going to be super excited to see him again. He's going to reveal to be one of the most badass characters we've seen in the Arrowverse, so I'm hyped for that. Unfortunately, next episode doesn't air until July 13th, so about 3 weeks away. There is a bit of good news though, and that is the fact that it originally was July 28th. So they've pushed it up by 2 weeks, didn't announce they pushed it up by 2 weeks until last night's promo, so that's something that's great as well. Also, John Diggle is showing up, which will be our first Arrowverse little tease, or our first Arrowverse hint at the greater universe out there. I'm really excited to see how Diggle ties in. I do think it's a little bit of a weird moment for them to kind of highlight the shared universe. I think that bringing in Diggle now isn't the greatest time. I feel like it either should have been earlier in the season, or they should be leaving it until this whole evil Superman thing is wrapped up, because in the promo we see Dig going over towards Lois, or Lois going over towards him, and I'd be surprised if we actually saw Diggle and Superman interact in the next episode. I think it'll very much just be Diggle on a military front, because his Batwoman cameo genuinely was as a cameo. It was a couple brief scenes, so I'm not honestly expecting him to play a big role in this episode. I'm just expecting him to kind of have a couple smaller scenes similar to his appearance in Batwoman. But yeah, I'm planning some videos. Basically, the video I'm planning is something talking about Batwoman, because this season is genuinely phenomenal. If you haven't been watching Batwoman, I think it deserves your time. It's a great show. I want to do something on Superman and Lois, talking about why that's worth your time. I want to talk about the next episode of Superman and Lois, basically going over the promo, talking about Diggle showing up, things like that. I want to do a video talking about the Supergirl problem, or the Arrowverse problem with Superman and Lois, essentially how, besides Diggle showing up next episode, they really have ignored a lot of things that they shouldn't have ignored, and while some of them have given excuses for why they've ignored it, like they've said some reasons why they haven't addressed Supergirl, and I personally don't like those reasons at all. I think that those reasons are just them saving face. I think there's something deeper going on there. And I also want to do a video talking about the Arrowverse timeline post-Crisis, because I feel like that would be something really fun to talk about. A lot of that's going to end up being speculation because we really don't know how things like Arrow or early Flash played out in this timeline, other than little references here and there. So I think that that'd be something really fun to talk about. But yeah, Superman Lois, it's off now for 3 weeks or 4 weeks. 3 weeks, I think. But it was a great episode last night, best of the show. I'm absolutely loving it. But how did you feel about it? Are you liking the show? Are you hating the show? Are you liking the episodes? Are you hating the episode? And please remember to like, share, subscribe, and all of that. And I hope you have a great day.